A warm good evening to one and all gathered here. Welcome to the second episode of Alive, the webinar series. As part of our new venture, Alive, the webinar series, IEEE Kerala Section site, in association with IEEE Education Society Kerala chapter, is providing you with a wonderful opportunity this evening by conducting a webinar session on the topic Empowering Women in Rural India through Technology Enhanced Skill Development. We are very delighted to have Dr. Bhavani Rao, our Director, AMMACHI Labs, Amrita Vishwa Vidhyapeetham, to handle this session. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you
Last
so
but
much.
not the least, I would like to welcome all the participants to this event. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to Dr. Bhavani Rao. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for that wonderful welcome, and thank you, members of the IEEE fraternity and from all the different chapters. Thank you so much for having me here this evening to speak with you, and thank you, audience, for taking the time to attend this talk. As she introduced the topic, I just would like to mention that the title is a very loaded title. There's some very interesting keywords that you can pull out of the title. So you have something called rural India, you have women, you have the word empowerment, you have the word skill development, and you, of course, have the word technology enhanced. And I'm sure, as members of IEEE, your entire interest resides in the last, the technology enhancement, because I'm pretty sure that's where your um, work is surrounded. But technology is always in the service of humans, right? So to have a very good understanding of humans and what human needs are, and what is the problem that you're trying to solve, it is as important to understand technology as it is important to understand the far more complex systems the technology is situated in. And this is probably the, the the reason why Amachi Labs, when it started work, ended up being such an interdisciplinary lab, because we, of course, worked with technology, and technology can be challenging on its own. But it's not just technology, but fitting technology in a way that worked in very low resource conditions like rural India, worked with specialized population like women, towards a very elusive goal like empowerment, tackling very, very difficult challenges like skill development. These are all combined into what went into technology development. So we had to literally diversify our portfolio overnight to being people who came purely from the tech world or the sciences world to the social sciences to humanities, um, and a whole gamut of things. So I hope that at the end of this talk, you will be able to take away from our experience how to look at complex situations, and how to make sure that you have an interdisciplinary approach when you're designing technology, and how important it is also to be inclusive while designing technology. Um, yeah, so I'll give you a brief overview of the work that we have done over the past 12 years, followed by there will be a short video presentation of our work, and after we'll take on any questions that you may have. So, yeah. So, like I said, the word rural. So, the word rural means generally you're talking about very low infrastructure, you're talking about large populations of people, low levels of literacy, multiple languages and dialects. This is what comes to your mind when you think about rural India. There's very less technology pervasiveness in these places. So you don't oftentimes have electricity, you don't have roads, you don't have the right infrastructure. You definitely, in the days when we started in 2009, you did not even really have mobile phones or cell phones, or even computers for that matter. Computers was a much further stretch. Um, we chose to work with women. Now you wonder why we would want to work with women, because women are in themselves a vulnerable population, but more than that, they are the keepers of all the vulnerable populations. So the women are the ones that look after the children, they look after the elderly, they look after the disabled, they look after the fields, they look after the livestock, and they look after the men. So they're keepers of all the population. So in working with women, we were hoping that our impact would multiply on all other vulnerable populations as well by strengthening this one group of people. And they're also half the population, right? So women are half the sky, they say. So also technology, if you notice, is often designed more for the male population than for the female population. So you have already rural India, which is already low tech, and a very, very small fraction of that would be women who had any exposure to technology. So you're again talking about a very, very untapped population. So next word that you tackle with is the word empowerment. So we have to understand even what the word empowerment means. So when we first started working, our understanding of empowerment was basically to work with rural women and you teach them a skill. The skill leads to some kind of gainful employment or income generation, and that economic gain automatically implied empowerment. And this is what we started with as a very, very simplistic definition of what empowerment meant. And then you come to skill development. In 2009, there was no fancy ministry for skill development. Skill development was pretty much the outcast, the illegitimate child of education, if one may say so, because nobody really realizes its value. Nobody gives it a place in formal education. It was covered by some 17 different ministries, and nobody really thought of of anything that contributes to knowledge or human welfare. It was like it was swept under the carpet. So there were like no standards. There's no formalization. It's pretty much in the informal sector. That was what skill development actually meant. There's very, very few definitions. And then, of course, we had the whole part of the technology enhancement. So, what were we trying to do in terms of technology enhancement? We were trying to bring tech into rural India. Yes, we were trying to bring tech into education and learning. But more importantly, we were trying to bring tech to skills. So, this is the intersection. What I did is just laid out the intersection of where we were working so that you will understand the context of what we were trying to build and why we were trying to build it. So, yeah, so we started working in the area of skill development. Again, it was primarily came as a project. It was a national level project. It was a literacy project. It was called the National Mission on Education through ICTs. So we started with the technologies, ICTs for education. And there was a small subnote in that entire vision that was laid out for the country, which talked about vocational education. So that was something that really caught the eye of our chancellor and said, well, this particular thing can possibly has the impact to help millions of our countrymen. So she said, why don't you try and take a look at this and see if you can actually build tools to help women. She knew I had an interest in working with women. Why don't you look and see if you can use this technology to help women in rural areas or in economically uh, disadvantaged populations. So with that, I think we also have Srividya on the call. Srividya again is one of the first people who started working with me on these projects. So we started looking at all these different elements that I have outlined for you. So Srividya started looking at skills. She started looking at women. There were some others who started looking at the technology of it, ICTs. I had some background in working with digital media and creating digital content. So we started putting things together. And our first idea was, can you teach a woman a non-traditional trade by using technology? And so we honed down on plumbing as a skill. And we chose plumbing for several reasons. One is that there's a huge social stigma behind the vocation of plumbing. It has caste connotations. It had economic connotations. It had connotations that This is not something that women did, it's something that only men did. And so we wanted to see if we could actually use technology to like leapfrog through over all these challenges. Can you teach women plumbing? Of course, you can definitely teach them directly without the use of technology, but if we use technology, would it make it much easier for us to train women in a trade which is non-traditional like plumbing? So with that, we started on multiple sites. So we started working on digital content, online games, and stuff like that. So the idea was also that technology would be like a carrot. So when you present something on technology, there's also the thrill of learning to use the technology and being exposed to new technology. So that we knew for sure will carry some weight in getting people interested. So the question was, would they be afraid because there was technology being used, or would it be attractive because technology was being used? And these were the questions that we had to deal with and had to see how successful what we built. So we had to make sure that our technology was almost transparent to the user, because already the cognitive load would be very high in learning the skills. So there should be no added cognitive load to the end user because of our technology. So we had to come up with completely new UI UX um, interfaces to work with the women in training them to do plumbing. We had to design the content, now content development for online education is something that's become very common, but back then we were some of the pioneers in designing how best to deliver educational content using technology. Um, yeah, and so as we were working on this, there's a very important challenge that was thrown to us. This is all fine. You can teach them how to do things. They can watch videos. They can learn how to do certain things. But what about more physical tasks where you have to do things with your hands and it requires physical skills that are built up? And this really requires like muscle memories, how to train people's muscles as well as their mental capabilities to actually perform a skill, like a physical skill. And so that's when we were first introduced to the haptics technology. Back then, when you Googled haptics, you'd probably find 3 links or 2 links, and that's about the amount the world was talking about haptics. But and none of us figured out and learned what the technology was about and how it was being used. Pretty much the only use of the haptic technology was then in medical simulators that where you had surgical operations, and it was not very advanced. It was not very refined, so there was a lot of work still being done on the haptic rendering side, on the software, on the mechanical devices. So it was a very, very nascent technology at that point of time. The touch screens on your phones was not a technology that was out at that point of time. So, so we started working, and one of the first things that we decided is that if we wanted to really create haptic feedback while we're trying to train somebody, we have to know what kinds of haptic feedback is important. So that started off another entire question to understand skills and to be able to characterize skills. So we worked on characterizing several hand tools. So anything that required a physical skill was then broken up into small sub skills of uh, what is the particular actions that are being done when you're using the tool? How do you hold it? How do you use it? What is the actual skill that is required to be able to use that particular tool effectively and consistently? So once we did this entire characterization and we kind of consolidated that entire effort into looking at what are the commonalities, what is common between the skills? Can we break it up into larger sections? So or we can we merge them into larger sections? And so in that process, we kind of came up with 2 main design ideas for physical simulators that actually had haptic feedback. One was called the Apta, which was the linear haptic device, and the other one was called the Chakra, which is a rotary haptic device. This is basically based on functions or actions that were based on either a motion on a plane or motion which was circular in nature. And we had different kinds of graphs that we needed for performing different tasks. And so once we came up with the characterizations, then we went to our design boards and we started designing what that simulator would look like. How would we be able to replicate haptic feedback? So there was the mechanical design of things, there was um, the software and uh, application design, and so that we are bringing pretty much element of what is now robotics, the software, the hardware, the mechanical, as well as the communication all together, instrumentation all together. And with that, we created what we would like to think is the first haptic simulator in the country. We called it the APTA. The APTA was capable of replicating the human performance on 18 different kinds of tools, and starting with something as simple as the hacksaw to uh, to saws of other kinds, table saws, and there's a whole range of different tools it could replicate because of the characterization that we had done. And we designed it in such a way that we could change the grasp. So this had haptic force feedback as well as it had vibratory feedback. So it was fixed with multiple sensors so that you could get the sense of the resistance as well as the vibration of using a tool. So that's kind of how we came up with our first device. And so we used the combination of the digital content, the online games that we made, plus the haptic simulators to train women in rural India. We were very careful about how we exposed the women to these technologies. So we started with what we call as progressive disclosure. So we had first very, very simple games that would help women just use. In those days, the mobile phone technology was not out as yet, and so we used computers with mouse and string. So very simple games where we could pin the tail of the elephant. So click, drag, drop things on how you can use games to teach women how to do basic mouse-based movements. The entire interface was based only on those three interactions. You click, you drag, you drop. So no complicated processes of entering names and passwords and signing in. Everything was picture based, so it was very intuitive for them to just click on something and click on something else. And that became their usernames or they became their passwords. So, really minimized what it took for them to use technology. So, once we had that and they were initially a lot of the feedback came. So when the women first came and sat in front of the computer, they were kind of a little scared because they're sitting in front of this machine and they had this resistance. And this is something that we all know. There's this fear of engaging with some expensive technology, and women tend to shy away from it. But once they started playing these games, then they started getting so much of confidence. Then we had almost no problem getting people back into the classes because they were so excited about using this technology. So once women were comfortable with the technology and it was designed in a way that was very comfortable for them, it slowly started introducing the classes. And so from that, there was the next level of interactions would be if you had 3D objects and you could uh, rotate these 3D objects in space. So you could have an idea of what things are. You could have exploded views and you could put things back together. So this was the next level of exposure for them. And then after that, once they've been through all this, at the very end, we would actually put them on a simulator. And so this was the progress of how we did things. And our initial deployments that we did both in Idukki and here in Amritapuri were very successful. The women that we actually trained in the year 2011 with the content that we created and the haptic devices and the tools that we made, the women who graduated as plumbers, till today, they have successful careers as plumbers. they took it up as a profession. It was not just that they just learned something, they actually took it up as a profession and they continued in the trade um, till today. And so this is something that um, is a good measure of what it means to be empowerment. It's not just about gaining money, but the fact that they stayed in the job for so many years shows the sustainability of the training and of the income generation capacity of these women. So that I think 10 years is a very good longitudinal test on whether an intervention worked or not. So this is probably our strongest story of empowerment, in the sense that we have 10 years, a record of 10 years of women learning a completely new skill and and being able to maintain that as her profession for 10 long years. Of course, this was just the very start of the work that we did. The work then got far more complicated and far more interesting. We were soon asked to build simulators for some of the largest construction companies in India, Larsen and Toubro, Shapurji, Palonji. Am I saying that right? Yeah. So, but with for Larsen and Toubro, we built a very sophisticated haptic feedback simulator that taught people how to bend bars. Thousands of students in Larsen and L&T's CSDIs have been trained on the simulators that have been built at Amrita. Of course, the kind of technology that we use to provide this haptic feedback got more and more sophisticated, the loops, the software. But even beyond all that, this is when we started making it far more sophisticated. We started creating a learning management system for skills. Just like you have a learning management system for your education, and now there's all digital education, and people are talking about LMS all the time. But nobody had even thought or created of a learning management system for skills, for physical skills, to characterize what are an expert's skills, to be able to measure a novice's skills as compared to what an expert's skills are, to be able to rate their performance and to be able to actually track their performance, give feedback based on their performance, to assess their performance. This is the kind of intelligence that we built into our simulator. So it involved machine learning and eventually artificial intelligence. And this is something that we are really, really proud of. Not many people know it, but the kind of depth that we went in into building these simulators. Um, yeah, sorry, just a second. I'm gonna catch. Um, Yeah, so like I mentioned, and from there, of course, our demographic. What we really realized in our pursuit of building these simulators is that how important it was for human beings to actually have a component of skill development as a part of your learning. Now, we're all so elitist. We think that something to do with physical skills is really meant for somebody with lower levels of education or lower levels of money, but that is not true. The best engineers are those who actually do things with their hands. Look at the Swiss. Those who come from their vocational streams are far better engineers than many Indians are. That's because they know how to do things with their hand. Now we talk about spatial intelligence. You need to know how to be able to rotate shapes in your mind. We're talking about all these things now that they say are hallmarks of what it makes to be a good engineer. I would say that learning vocational skills at a very young age, learning how to do things with your hand, is something that is so critical to being a good engineer. So, this really drove us to actually bringing again the technology based learning that we started off working for in rural India uh, into schools. Just to complete the topic on training women in rural India, um, we took on a very large project in the year 2012, and this was for the United Nations Democracy Fund. And over here, we realized that it was very good for us to actually teach skills, physical skills using technology, but it was also equally important for us to teach soft skills using technology. or life skills. So then we came up with the next problem is how do you actually introduce life skills, again using technology. So we did some very simple things to begin with. Very simple things included finding appropriate videos, having discussions around it, having the students actually design interventions within their community based on the skills that they had been exposed to in terms of life skills. And a combination of all this was something that we implemented in 2012, like I said, under the United Nations Democracy Fund, where we trained 4,500 women in a year and a half on various vocational skills. The project was extremely successful. And the fact that so many women were also not just empowered with vocational skills and life skills, but also technology skills. This became like a huge boost. And this is where also we redefined what we understood was empowerment. Empowerment did not only mean a better income or a sustained job, but it also meant the power to transform your life and the lives of those around you for the better. And so we slowly started expanding our understandings of the space that women live in, what are the challenges that they face, and how empowerment in itself is a movement towards equality and harmony. And yeah, and so also from one side, while we understood that when we're talking about skills and technology, it was so important for us to already introduce this much earlier into schools. And so there's a strong movement towards taking up maker skills and then introducing it into the school system. And this also still persists with Gayatri leading the forefront on introducing robotics and skills of such sorts into the school systems and popularizing uh, really learning by actually doing and building things from scratch. I think it's the only way we can really transform the engineers of tomorrow. Apart from that, in terms of technology enhanced learning, we are now moving into the next frontier of using technology towards learning. We have tried to really explore on how to use virtual reality, really bring down the cost combination of virtual reality and haptics. We're working on a really large national level project in building what we call the Skill E Labs for the schools, for the CBSE schools. And if anybody is interested in participating in this national level project, please reach out to Gayatri. We would be happy to have you join us. Now, apart from virtual reality, we've also used virtual reality to train people in emotional intelligence and soft skills. How do you train yourself to attend interviews and things like that of those natures? So we've taken technology beyond just the physical skills, but really into the finer and the subtler skills as well. So this our pursuit doesn't end over here. Our journey continues with a new area of research coming up, which we call the skill intelligence, that really looks into defining what skills are at much deeper levels, of course, and the use of technology becomes critical for this to happen. And I think with that, it's 6:30. I have to end my speech because I do have to rush. So, Gayatri, if you could quickly play the video, that would be wonderful.
Sure, Dr. Bhavani. So can you hear me? Do you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, you are visible.
Do you see my?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am,
ma'am.
it's visible.
AMMACHI Lab is the most creative way of empowering women. Of all of the projects which the UN funds around the world, this is the one dearest to our heart. It's the one we're most proud of, and it's the one that we intend to take to the rest of the world so that they can learn from what you have achieved.
The one critical way to survive in a changing environment is to make sure that you have
the skills to survive in a changing environment. So we need to either continuously update our skills or acquire new skills to survive in this kind of an environment. We are a multidisciplinary group of close to 100 people. We have engineers, artists, artisans, videographers, social scientists, field workers, volunteers, and exchange students from around the globe, and all working to understand India's complex social problems and together build solutions. With vocational skills training, there's a huge component that you have to do with your hands. So how do you teach something with your hands by using technology?
Our methodology is the CVIT methodology. It stands for Computerized Vocational Education and Training. It's a blended learning approach for vocational and life skills. Till date, we have developed over 15 vocational courses and 20 life skills courses. And we have used it to train rural women and children across 21 states of India.
You can't throw technology at difficult social situations and expect it to get better. You have to take it there. You have to work very sensitively to see how it's going to fit into people's lives.
They spend their time in the villages along with our end users to really understand their issues from a place of empathy and of connection. Our vision of gender equality is inspired by our Chancellor's words. Women and men are of equal value, like two wings of a bird, for without the two in perfect harmony, humanity cannot progress. We hold India's only UNESCO chair in the area of gender equality and women's empowerment. Our research goal is to further women's empowerment and gender equality as a community agenda, in harmony with the environment, towards a sustainable future. While addressing problems in villages, we work to identify what vulnerabilities they have and co-design interventions with them. One of which we're really proud of is addressing the need for toilets. We taught women to build and maintain their own toilets, and after they mastered these skills, they mobilized the community towards ending open defecation. Some now earn a living by building toilets for others in the village. It's a win-win situation. It's a community-led total sanitation approach. Some of our women leaders were even honored by the President of India for their efforts towards ending open defecation. This was a huge achievement and a source of inspiration for all.
आपने शौचालय के निर्माण के लिए जो बहनों को मिस्त्री का काम सिखाने का अभियान चलाया है, वो सचमुच में ह्यूमन रिसोर्स डेवलपमेंट, स्किल डेवलपमेंट का एक बहुत बड़ा काम है। बहनें और बेटियां स्वच्छता की दूत तो पहले से ही थे, अब आपने स्किल और सशक्तिकरण को भी इससे जोड़ा है।
We integrate life skills throughout our training programs. To us, it is as important, if not more, than vocational skills. These trainings strengthen the socio-democratic voice and economic empowerment of women. It expands the collective empowerment space of women. We have had a lot of firsts. We have trained India's first women plumbers. We have built the first haptic simulator in the country. We have had tribal women launch Kickstarter campaigns to fund their businesses. All this could not have happened were it not for the guidance, the vision, and the opportunity given by our Chancellor, Shri Mata Amritanandamayi Devi.
So I hope that could give you a glimpse of what Dr. Bhavani was talking about in terms of skill development. So we at AMMACHI Labs, the focus of our work has been to bring together technical skills and soft skills from the domain of the skill development and bring it together with women empowerment as the approach or as the goal for the skill development. And that's we did it through technology. So let me again share my screen here. Uh, So just to show what she said in a pictorial manner. So these are the different components that we have from AMMACHI Labs for the work that we are trying to do. We have the motor skill, the haptics. The haptics is what Dr. Bhavani talked about in terms of the simulators. So when you want to teach physical skills, whether it is surgical skills, plumbing skills, or any kind of skills that involve motor movement, that means moving your hands or your legs or your body, some kind of physical movement, right? So that all that can be trained through a simulator. And we have built several haptic simulators at AMMACHI Labs so that we can do training using haptics on these various skills. Why do you need a simulator to do such training? Primarily because when you're trying to do such training without simulators, you need a lot of trained manpower. That is, you need technical know-how. So if you're going to villages and you're trying to teach, say, plumbing skills, you need a master plumber who is going to be able to teach. And not just have a master plumber who can actually teach. Because many times we see that they learn plumbing as a trade, but they do not know how to teach it to somebody else in a very step-by-step manner. The other thing is that when a student is learning these skills, it is also important to be able to tell the student what are the mistakes they are doing and how to give feedback to the students in a positive and an encouraging manner, so that they are actually able to learn these skills and it doesn't become something that becomes something that becomes a demotivating factor for the student itself, right? So we did a lot of work on human motion analysis. This is the highest end of technology. So we did using both VR and that is we use skeletal tracking to know where are your hands and where are your muscles with respect to where are you looking at, and also with respect to what is the action that needs to be performed, right? And finally capturing it using robotics and automation. Robotics, you can say that if I can build a robot that has the intelligence of a human and I can capture it in a robot, that is the most scalable solution. We can make any number of robots and then the robots can start teaching. So the first question we need to understand is, do we know how to teach? Do we understand human, and do we understand how humans teach, and how can we build such kind of systems that can then effectively teach, whether it is motor skills or whether it is soft skills. So we invested a lot in learning technologies. So we developed a lot of multimedia like audio, video, a lot of gaming methods in order to be able to teach. And also, as Dr. Bhavani talked about, created the LMS system that will be able to track the student as they are learning. So they are starting as a novice, somebody who doesn't know a skill. And then as they start progressing, how are they progressing? What are the aspects they are having difficulty with? Which aspect of the skill do they not understand? So this is what we are trying to, we try to capture through our learning analytics, which also uses artificial intelligence in it. And to make this all into a very, the computer human interaction part comes where you want to make it very immersive, so that they feel that they are actually in a workshop or in a construction site or in some place, and they are learning it over there. So this is also called situated learning. When you do something in that particular, when you're having an immersion and you're actually in that particular job, you learn the job better rather than you be removed and you think you're in an office. So we developed a lot of AR and VR simulations. This is continued work, and also include games, but we call it serious games. So this is not gaming for fun, but these are all developing games and game mechanics for making people learn whatever trades they are trying to learn. And at the end of the whole thing, the whole story makes sense only if the skill development has been of some use. So somebody has been able to utilize this for their well-being, for improving, maybe coming out of poverty, whatever is the benchmark that we want to set, right? Or just earn a little more money if you're taking financial, economics as a method of measuring, or their perception about themselves. Are they feeling more confident? Are they feeling that yes, I can tackle problems, right? I can try to tackle challenges. Like Dr. Bhavani talked to you about mason. The women masons whom we trained on toilet building developed that kind of self-efficacy in themselves that now they could go and take jobs on their own to maybe build a kitchen or to maybe build an extra room for their house. So these are all, measures of how we can use skill development towards a goal, towards something. So whether it is better well-being, better, economically, financial well-being, or mental, in terms of, I would say, better confidence in their work, in their own abilities, right? And all this we are doing in a very research-driven and a very rigorous manner. So a lot of work that Srividya has been driving is on implementation sciences. That is, how do we monitor and evaluate all the technology solutions that we have at AMMACHI Labs, so that it is being done in such a manner that it is having a sustainable impact. It is having a meaningful impact. And the meaning is, again, what is meaning for what we are trying to do? It is when the people, the beneficiaries, the people for whom we are working for, they feel they have a voice, and they feel that they were contributors into the solution. It is not like we just came, we dumped something on their head and walked away and said, now you are a better, you're in a more developed, or you're in a better situation. That's not what we're trying to do, but actually to make them part of the process. So we work with them to come up with solutions that is most impactful for them. And then as they learn the skills and as they develop themselves, I continuously keep working with them so that the change happens towards the positive manner. So this is, in short, a very high-level summary, and there is a lot of different technologies that come into this entire gamut of things. So when we talk about skill development, it is really touching so many different areas of technology and also social sciences to make it sustainable and impactful and meaningful. So I think given this time, probably, this is what we wanted to share. So maybe we should stop here. And Srividya and I, Dr. Bhavani had to leave, but Srividya and I are here. We can take questions from you on what we presented. There is so much we can say. There is like 10, from 2009 onwards to 13 years of work, which is very difficult to present in its sum total in a matter of an hour or short time. But we we tried to summarize it as best as we can. Oh, Dr. Bhavani is there. Okay, sorry, Dr. Bhavani. I thought. So maybe we can open the floor up for any questions.
Thank you so much, Gayatri ma'am and Bhavani ma'am, for this wonderful session. So now we will go ahead and take time for some questions. If you have any doubts, you can unmute yourself and ask, or you can raise your queries in the chat box.
This is Bindu GR. Actually, this was a very wonderful talk that I heard today. Very innovative kind of approach. I'm so happy that I attended actually, Gayatri Madam and Bhavani Madam. No, I just wanted to know, how did you come to this? This topic. Like, how did you arrive at this project? The concept, the idea. How did you come to this? Any one of you, please.
Yeah. So actually in 2009, I think one of the first projects that we got at AMMACHI Labs was a national mission project from the Skill Development Ministry. At that time, it was called MHRD, the Ministry of Human Resource Development. And they actually asked us to develop skill development as a scalable solution where we are trying to focus on vocational education. So we didn't want to work on mainstream education. There are a lot of players already there in the mainstream education, but to start working on skill development. And as Dr. Bhavani said, this was something that she has always been, when we have been working in villages in India, we have been traveling. I mean, the Mata Amritanandamayi Mat, the Embracing the World.org is an umbrella, humanitarian, it's an umbrella of several humanitarian organizations coming together. And there is a lot of work that we are doing across the world from disasters to reconstruction, rebuilding, all kinds of different areas. In fact, in all the SDG areas, right? So when we go to the villages, we saw the need that people sometimes they lack aspirations. They don't see that there is a way out of the vicious cycle of where they are. It feels like they are there, and there isn't a way forward. There isn't a path forward. So skill development seemed to be the most logical. What is it that? How can you give hope to somebody? The easiest way is to upskill them on something, and then they can build on it.
Gayatri Chichi, if I can just jump in.
Please,
also, I think also as Bhavani Chichi, Professor Bhavani indicated in the chat, also in her talk as well. Along with what you're saying, it was really the guidance and the drive from Amma that we ended up actually choosing the intervention and also the target population, the goal. Everything was really defined by our Chancellor Amma, and that's really how, along with everything that you're saying, that's how we took it forward. Yeah.
So that was the key focus. So when we got this national mission project, she really inspired us to take it on, and she really told us that this is the way to if we want to say the Dr. Bhavani keeps reminding us all the time. Villages are the soul of India. That's where India resonates. And if we build our villages and build it stronger, that's where we can really build India to a better India. And so that is what Amma's focus has been, to adopt villages and to do projects in villages that and skill development is the most central part of the efforts that we are trying to do in the villages. Sorry, Dr. Bhavani, I didn't mean to take Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in.
No,
Thank you so much. It was really a innovative thing that can be inspiration to many more people to conduct such kinds of things. Thank you so much.
No, I just wanted to add actually one thing to what Gayatri was saying. It's interesting that we kind of we came upon skill development from the inspiration that Amma had given us, but then obviously inspired by the problem in the villages. But here we are, nearly 15 years later, still discovering a lot. Still discovering new things that are yet to be innovated, not just from a technological perspective, but from a social science perspective. It's been a very, very it's kind of like a bottomless, in a good way, a bottomless pit of a source of innovation for us. And there's been a lot that we've been able to discover on both sides, social science and on the engineering side. Yeah, it was a great sort of journey that we took, not necessarily knowing that the depth of where we would be going, but here we are, and still very inspired by the work that we're doing.
Thank you, Sridhar.
Dear attendees, kindly take a few minutes to fill up the feedback form. It is now available in the chat box. Any more doubts? Okay, it looks like we have covered all your questions. So now we can end our session. Let me invite Electa for proposing the vote of thanks.
Hello. Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
So, good evening to all. It gives me an immense pleasure to deliver the vote of thanks of today's session. First and foremost, I would like to thank dear Dr. Bhavani Rao. Ma'am, thank you so much for making time in your busy schedule to speak at our session. It was only because of your generosity that we were able to make our program such a success. We express our sincere gratitude for giving such an excellent coverage on this topic and providing us such valuable information. We all are inspired by by the actions of your entire team that you have done to empower the women. We also wishing you all the best for all your future endeavors. Once again, thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Electa.
Thank you, ma'am. I would also like to thank Gayatri ma'am for speaking at this session. It was all because of her efforts that we were able to conduct this session. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for all your support and guidance. Thank you, ma'am. Next, I would also like to thank Srividya ma'am for her presence. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us today. Next, on behalf of IEEE Kerala Section SIGHT and IEEE Education Society Kerala chapter, I would like to thank all the attendees of this event. We appreciate you being here, and once again, thank you for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Electa. Thank you, ma'am, for spending your valuable time and being with us in this session. This is a great experience, and we are looking forward for more such sessions. So once again, thank you, ma'am, and all the participants for making this event a grand success. Thank you. You can leave.